Bry Guy here. Hope you're sparkling, ready for another Pixels Refreshed. We got a bombshell dropped on us last week when they re-announced Bayonetta 3. Well, not really an announcement, but it finally gameplay. Some people thought this was dead in the water. There was some development turmoil. There was a couple of things that happened. I know some people left Platinum. Anyways, Bayonetta 2 is like probably my favorite action game of all time. There's a lot of good contenders for it, but that one has a special place in my heart, and I am excited to check out this trailer. I'm going to be looking a little bit more into the tech than most of the people. You're going to get some reaction from me, but mostly what's going to make my video different is the tech analysis. Let's get into it. Okay. So first, when I saw this, I had a hint that it was Bayonetta 3 because it reminded me of the scene from Bayonetta 2 where at the very beginning of the game when she comes out of the store buying things, and then the big plane scene where she's like basically on a jet fighting things. It's in the first level. So from a tech perspective, I mean, there's no like alpha based fur shader or anything. So typically they have kind of like layers of alpha on the outside to create fur. That's one way to do it. You can also do it through splines, which are kind of like little, how do I word it? A spline is like, it's one vector path that kind of comes out, and then we can kind of generate a set amount of them, and it can make lots of them between multiple splines. So you can use it to create quite a bit of fur. I'm simplifying that quite a bit, but they're very useful when doing things like fur and grass, but they're obviously, you don't really typically see them on the Switch. You see them a lot on the PS5 and the Series X, and they're a big feature in the latest versions of Unreal. But what we're probably going to see here, because they're stuck to the Switch, well, first of all, we're seeing aliasing in this environment. I would guess the base resolution's probably going to be, I'm hoping it's 900p. Okay. So I'm getting, like, from these characters outright, I'm getting a, like, Ninja Gaiden 3 vibe. Because they're, like, the materials and stuff aren't remarkable, right? It's like, when I look at this fabric here, or the masks, or that, it's like the way that the glass is reflecting. It just looks like it's a texture reflection of some kind. You know, and this is pretty generic materials. So it's like my guess with something like this is on the Switch, because they want to probably do much crazier things with environments and stuff. They're not going to go crazy on character shaders or effects in those regards because they're just too expensive on the Switch. So my guess is they would probably try to keep with a similar visual bar to Bayonetta 2, but use it to push the intent and the intensity of the scenes much further, if that's possible. Bayonetta 2 had some pretty crazy scenes. Because these guys don't really matter. It's like, this design's pretty cool for the big guy. Explosion's pretty nice. Decent emission and stuff on the... Another one. These they're not acting like angels. I wonder if this is a new threat, because in Bayonetta, Bayonetta 2 was always the angels, and they weren't ever like puddles appearing. They kind of have the aesthetic of angels, but it's a little bit different. This is like, this is so like them. And it's one thing to do this, but it's like, basically, because people were hoping for Bayonetta 3 earlier, and then they released Astral Chain. And this, for anyone who knows, is a big nod to Astral Chain. So this was the mascot of the police force in Astral Chain. So now they're like, oh my gosh, is this Astral Chain 2? I wanted Bayonetta 3. So, funny trick. It's like, if I was looking at the tech in this, it's like you can see low-res material textures in the eyes and this P. You can see pixelization. It's clearly half. It looks very rubbery, which happens when the materials aren't that sophisticated. They might have wanted it to look like a balloon. And then the Bayonetta reveal. Dang. Bad boy. So over the top and so awesome. So Bayonetta's design looks pretty good. From a tech perspective, I think this is all pretty comparable to 2. So I'm not seeing anything remarkably different from what you had in 2. I would bet the geometry, like the geometric density, is within 10 to 20%. It's probably a little bit more complex, but not most noticeably. I mean, the fact that they have all of the hair being braided, that might actually, you can't model that quite as simply. So that will take more polygons in itself.
Late, but I'm ready to give you everything.
It's so good. Yeah, I got some reflective materials on here. Obviously, it's just some kind of texture reflecting differently. They can do that using, what's the name of the metal? There's a group of metal materials you can use that there's a name for them. The name is eluding me. But yeah, they essentially, they kind of, in a way, ignore the light, but they do really well at giving the illusion of reflecting. Metcap, that's it. Metcaps. Awesome. So, I mean, one thing that looks like a big advantage over Bayonetta 2 is it doesn't look like we're getting some of the performance hitching we were getting. Maybe in the final game there'll be lots of scenes like that still do, because Bayonetta 2 operated somewhere between 40 and 60 frames per second most of the time. Man. So now we're getting like this cool butterfly form. Looks like it either is ignoring the lighting or it's emissive itself. So you can actually do something with materials where you can basically have specific material sets ignore the lights, which will make them look emissive, or you can have them emit outright. There's advantages to doing both. Now, sometimes you want the emissive things. The advantage with emissive things is they can affect environments depending on your pipeline. You can set emissive, well, at least static emissive materials up to affect your bakes. So you have lights, and then if you want to have your scene, if you have a set light and you want your scene to have nice bounce light, you do what's called baking. So you make a big light map texture that captures the information from that, and that you can use emissive materials in your environment, and it will actually add some of that to your bake. But it often, the moving aspects like characters and whatnot, so these things that might be emissive, like the eye here and that, they usually can't add the lighting information from that into the bake. So you don't get any bounce lighting from it, just kind of an initial lightning of it. Over the top dancing. What? Like, what is this? Oh, okay, that's pretty cool. I like the glyphs that you're seeing here. That's some really sweet stuff. I'm trying to see, like, this is is this more complex than Bayonetta 2's one? It might be a little bit more complex. Getting like kaiju fights, that's pretty sweet. Oh man. If you're controlling this with Bayonetta, if it's following your actions, this is going to be so much fun. And this is something that we didn't see really much of in Bayonetta 2, so this is sick. So this is kind of what I was thinking, is that they were going to keep the graphics level the same as Bayonetta 2, which is kind of what we're seeing here, but they're using it to go more over the top or go even crazier with the amount of stuff that can happen, which is a really good way to spend your resources. Riding a missile into it. I am so excited for this. I really can't wait. I hope there's a special edition I get a pre-order on. So this is cool because they have a scene like this where you're on a train in Bayonetta 2 and the environment's destroying as you're running forward. And this is a really, really cool thing. So to see scenes like this again, this is like another version of it, though it does look like the frame rate's dropping. But the scale of the environment here, like, for a Switch game, this is really impressive. And this is where Platinum really comes over the top. The detail on this is actually pretty good. I think that's a step up from Bayonetta 2. I'll have to check. Awesome. Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be so good to play. Bayonetta 2 plays really good. So for those that don't know, like... Here, one sec. For those who don't know, one of the big things with where Platinum Games comes from is... Platinum comes out of a split from Capcom. So what happened with... so essentially, Clover was a studio within Capcom that made Beautiful Joe, it made God Hand, and it made Okami. And none of those games sold particularly well. They were all great games, and they received critical praise. God Hand was one of the weird ones because some people absolutely love it, and some people really hate it. And it didn't do as well in the reviews, but both Beautiful Joe and Okami did very well in the reviews, but they struggled to sell more than 100,000 copies. So what Capcom decided to do was close Clover. And then what happened when Capcom closed Clover is that the vast majority of a lot of Capcom staff, high-end staff, people who, like a lot of the teams that worked on Devil May Cry and Resident Evil and Mega Man and Beautiful Joe and Okami obviously as well, they left and they formed a studio called Platinum. So Platinum comes out of the closing of Clover and the closing of Clover, and that obviously because they made really amazing, beautiful games, but they didn't sell that well. And anyways, they went on to form Platinum. So Platinum's kind of like always been a Capcom 2 in that it's so deeply tied with Capcom. And Capcom's always been so well tied with gameplay, and Platinum Games took that as well. So it's like when I see like Bayonetta, to me, and this is a weird thing to say, but it's like the true continuation of Devil May Cry. To me, it kind of goes Devil May Cry 1, 2, 3, Bayonetta 1, 2. And that's kind of the Devil May Cry series. And I would argue, like, my personal preference is, out of all of them, I think Bayonetta 2 is my favorite game out of all of those types of games. But that's my personal bias. I admit that it's a bias, but I just love Bayonetta 2 so much. And I love those games. And I still love Devil May Cry 4 and Devil May Cry 5. I played the crap out of those ones. But I will still say that that Bayonetta 2 is definitely my favorite out of those. It's probably the Bayonetta 2 is my favorite. The next one would be Devil May Cry 1 and then Devil May Cry 3. Okay, let me just check the Bayonetta 2 intro real quick because one second. Let's see. Okay. Pull this one up. So there's a lot of things. I think that it's worth coming in and reassessing the beginning of Bayonetta 2 because a lot of the elements we're seeing in 3 happened in the beginning of 2. So let's pop over here and then just compare the tech that we're seeing from 3 to 2.
Besides, I did that job for you for free.
So this is a very similar scene. This is that same kind of plaza in New York. They're not doing the Christmas theming. The materials seem a little bit better in Bayonetta 3. If you compare this motorcycle to the tank or the rifles or other things, I think that it's slightly better in Bayonetta 3. Also, this is looking a little bit more aliased. So this Bayonetta 2 runs in 720p on the Switch and the Wii U. So it might have meant that they pushed to 900p, hopefully, maybe 10. I doubt 1080p, but maybe 900p on the Switch.
Now that you mention it.
But things like this hair is very weird looking, and the hair in Bayonetta 3 looks much better. So there is actually a definitive improvement in materials.
Managed to turn himself into a
Okay, let's skip ahead. I don't want to watch the whole thing. There's a lot of content here, but to get some kind of sense. I do prefer Bayonetta's hairstyle in 2. That's just me. I really enjoyed Bayonetta 2's hairstyle. Sorry, I thought this was the plane scene. Just close this. Okay.
You know, I try to avoid doing this in my Sunday best.
Kicking a plane. That's what you gotta do. Okay. See, this is sweet. So this is where Bayonetta does one of the best uses of sacrificing like graphics tech for scale. And that's always a worthwhile thing. It is perfectly fine to reduce the quality of graphics if you have an idea that is necessary to have reduced scene complexity. So yeah, I do think the materials on the outfits are looking significantly better. And, okay, so the big 2 scenes that I want to check out here are the chase. Okay, so I wanted to see the complexity of this dragon in comparison to the one on Bayonetta 2. So, Bayonetta 3. So, you have this train scene here. This is the one I was talking about, where the train tracks are getting destroyed as it goes. It's very similar to the building destruction scene that we were seeing in Bayonetta 3. So right off, they're showing us that there's not going to be a reduction in craziness. In fact, you're getting much more buildings breaking down and stuff than you are in this bridge scene, which is primarily just the parts of the bridge. Although this scene was awesome, and I absolutely loved it. I thought this was a wonderful fight. And they really take advantage of the fact that there's much less... okay, so there is a reduction in material complexity compared to some games. There's a reduction in like overall lighting complexity and stuff, but you don't care about it when the scene's zoomed out and they're showing you something really amazing. So it's a really good context for that. Okay. Great. So, and then the last thing I want to see is the dragon complexity. So you can definitely see, if you look at the base materials, like on the arms of this angel and stuff, that there is an improvement in quality on these assets on Bayonetta 3. I would say that the meshes must be at least 40 or 50% more, around 40, 50% more complexity, more vertices. So this boss here is the one that I wanted to check out. So I think the geometry is increased here as well. So this is the exact same dragon that you're seeing in Bayonetta 3 that Bayonetta summons. Awesome. I love Bayonetta 2. It's such a badass game. I just want to see if it zooms out a little bit more so we can get a comparison image. Okay, so we have a pretty strong comparison right here after this. So pause it. Right at the end of this boss fight. Okay. So if we're looking here, one second, let me pull up the other video for comparison. So I grabbed some comparison screenshots between Bayonetta 2 and Bayonetta 3, just to compare the complexity. So here in Bayonetta 2, this might be a lower LOD when it jumps out, but I think it's pretty representative of what it looks like most of the time. Let's just scale this. Okay. And then we have the Bayonetta 3 comparison shot. Now there's a chance this is like a pre-rendered or very high LOD that we're not seeing, and it's not a fair comparison. But we also have this in-game, sorry, I rotated it by accident. This in-game model as well, where you can see that it does look much more complex. We're getting more of these, specifically the spikes and veins and stuff coming out of it, and this underbelly. So it does look like the complexity of this mesh is maybe, I don't know, 40, 50% higher than it was in Bayonetta 2. So there is visual improvement in that way. So I think overall, we're looking at a slight improvement in materials, slight improvement in textures, and in overall geometric complexity of objects, which is a pretty big, coming from Wii U was the last time we saw this. But, I mean, so this is one of my favorite franchises. I've been collecting them forever. I'm looking forward to this quite a bit. I mean, obviously, I hope that they release a version of it for the... Well, I really hope that this version, when it comes to the Switch 2 or whatever that is, when it comes out, will have some form of DLS that kicks in automatically, similar to like the Auto HDR on the Xbox Series X, where you don't have to worry about upscaling your games. It just knows, hey, the tensor cores are there, and the API will just take it and automatically upscale it to 4K, so that we can get better versions of these games, and that it'll be a better version of DLSS when that comes. It does look like they improved the materials. I'm curious whether they have just maybe they improved their PBR workflow. Maybe they now have specular maps or something that they didn't have before. In general, I think, I mean, this is one of my favorite action series of all time. I personally consider it like the true successor to the Devil May Cry franchise. I know that might not be something everyone agrees with, which is fine. It's just my personal stance. And it's, I don't know, like I'm very excited. I can't wait for it. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you do, feel free to click the like button, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.